It is our pleasure right now, as I am live in Las Vegas on Radio Row, to light up the phone line back to Ashburn as we are joined by the head coach of the Washington Commanders. It is Dan Quinn. DQ, Craig Hoffman here with you. Thanks so much for your time, sir. Are you used to getting introduced as the Commanders head coach yet?
It feels good, Craig. I know that. And, yeah, I'm really pumped to be here and to get to know you and the fan base here. And so it's a cool time, man. We're just getting rocking, but a lot of energy here in the building and moving forward, hitting on some staff stuff. That's a number one, top of the pile right now, and keep hitting these processes as we go, man.
Yeah, I know you are busy hiring the staff, so appreciate a few minutes of your time here on the radio. Let's dive right in. I was aware of this 360 review that you did, even when you were a candidate, because it involved calling so many people and trying to figure out how to be better the next time you got that shot, as you said on Monday. And one of them happened to be my podcast co-host and Logan Paulson. So I'm curious, as you went through that process, how much of the information that you got, the feedback that you got, was things that you were like, yep, I knew that? And then how much of it was new information to you where you're like, man, I'm so glad I did this review so that I know this thing when I get my next chance?
Yeah, and that's cool that Logan shared that with you, because when I asked, I didn't want to know anybody. And so some were like, hey, put my name on this or say it. But I'm glad that they reached out to Logan, because I've always thought, like, as a player, man, this guy had perspective. He could see things. He was a leader. So that's cool to hear that he was one of the people, because I think it's spoken to about, 40 to 50, current players, former players, current coaches, former coaches. So it was valuable to me. I would say going into it, I didn't want to have any biases to know who was there and what can I do better. So what they did, Craig, is they, kind of went through the strengths to say, hey, man, don't change this. Keep this the same. This is something that you want to hit on. And then at the, on the other side to say, what were some blind spots? What were some things to make sure that I want him to know this? And so that's what helped me. I'd say going into it, I had fresh eyes, Craig. I didn't want to go in, I bet it's this, I bet it's that. I just said, hey, I'll see the information when I get it. I didn't try to, predict what it would be. I would say after reading it, I wasn't surprised to hear that some thought I was probably pushing yourself too thin, helping here, helping here, helping here. And so that's sometimes what we all do, right? You can help with this, you can help with this. I wanted to make sure I stayed, right down the middle with the team, the staff, the players, and focus on the things that we could get better at. And what's good, Craig, is I got, a chance to do that, to apply some of those things, during my time, on the next job when I went to Dallas. So coming here, it's not, starting it from that space, 4 years ago. It was actually things I got to do to put into play coming to here. And that was really the goal behind it, man, to say, can I find these things to absolutely nail it? And then I had a chance to work on it. It's one thing to recognize it, right, but then it's another thing to put it into play.
Yeah, no, the implementation is always huge in a situation like that. You mentioned spreading yourself too thin as being one of those things that is a real focus for you. And I think here a lot of people look back at the previous 4 years and see a coach that was potentially stretched too thin and are happy to see the setup as it is. But for you, how different is the setup for Dan Quinn in Atlanta versus Dan Quinn in Washington?
Yeah, I would say coming into, this opportunity here, certainly looking for, a general manager as a partner to go through it. I don't know if it's different as much, Craig, in terms of setup. A lot of the clubs, there's ownership structure and general manager. It's honestly, man, just keeping, Adam's going to do a fantastic job on personnel, and we've got excellent coaches on some scheme stuff. And so, when we get through to that, the secret sauce of most good teams, man, as you know this, it's that play style, and it's being that dog-ass competitor and all the things we do. It's the speed, the way that we would hunt on defense. It's the way you sprint off the ball, the explosive plays and finishing plays. And so that's, to me, what separates teams. It's, yeah, you get the personnel right, and all the teams have, scheme-wise and challenge people with motions and leverages and blitzes and disguises. But it's that last piece, man, that makes it. And that's the attitude, the swagger, the toughness, the tackling, the finishing, the hitting. That's what brings all of this together. And when you can hit all three of those, Craig, and there's a lot of good teams that have good personnel and you can be short on another, or a lot of teams that have good scheme but maybe don't have the finish of it. But when you put all three, it's talking about, like I said, out hitting and finishing and tackling and the speed and the effort and just straining so damn hard for your teammates, that's the separator. And that's what we're going to strive to do. And it's not just that you call it up on game days, the way you practice, the way you train. And so that's what I'm looking forward for you and, for everybody else watching us play when we get it. Think of it like offense, defense, and special teams. You have to have all three rocking. Well, same thing. It's the personnel connection, the scheme connection, and then honestly just the play style connection.
So, Dan, if we get a chance to do this with any kind of frequency and you get to know me, you will know that the art of coaching is a bit of an obsession of mine. And all those things that you say sound great, but I would love to dig just one step deeper. And basically the question is, like, how do you accomplish that? Because every team says they want to play fast. Every team wants to be physical. You're never going to interview a coach and be like, yeah, physicality, meh, don't really care about it. But as you said earlier, like the knowledge of what to do versus the implementation of doing it. You've had so much success doing it. How do you actually get that out of NFL players?
Yeah, I think you get what you emphasize, right, Craig? And so when you can spread yourself too thin, I want to look at this personnel, and I want to get onto the scheme and the play style, like you can get watered down. And so you want to make sure that you nail that. And so that is something that I won't back off of. I just won't. I'm, firmly believe that, when you play against a team that really brings it and has the other part of their game together, that's what makes, it all go. And honestly, to me, that's the essence of a head coach. How do you tie offense and defense and special teams and chemistry and the message you want to be and your play style? Like, that's literally the job of the coach, to tie all that together. And if you need to emphasize something a little bit more, hey, you need more short yardage work here. We need more red zone. You pull those levers and you pull those strings. And so to me, that's what's the fun challenge of the job, is tying all of it together and bringing these, the players, the coaches, the staff, the building, the fans, all of that kind of connects into this. And that's what makes the job hard. It makes it fun, but it takes special traits to do that. And that's the essence of the job at the end of it, is to pull the whole thing together. And that's what I intend on doing.
Dan Quinn, head coach, Washington Commanders, with us here on the Hoffman Show. When you get to the personnel side of it, you mentioned a couple of position groups you like the other day, but I think a lot of us look at this roster as observers from the last year and say, it feels like there was more talent here than the record, but you've actually got to make that differentiation with Adam. So how do you, from a process standpoint, I'm not stupid enough to think that you're going to call out any kind of single player here, but from a process standpoint, how do you differentiate positions and players that need to be upgraded versus players that were maybe misused and have a skill set that can be unlocked?
Yeah, I think it first starts, Craig, and what, the best way on the team is you want to make, cut-ups on each player. And that's where the evaluation starts, in your own house first, and finding unique traits that players have, and then how would we feature them within the scheme. So every single player on our roster has a cut-up built on them. This is how they play. These are the strengths. These are the things that we want to keep emphasizing. And so when you start there, Craig, in your own space, and this is not just starting here now, this is an annual one to go. And then after you do that assessment, then you can kind of get into what I would call, like in the simplest terms, must. Then this must happen. We have to have this personnel to add to, to be who we want to be. And then there's some needs. Okay, we need this spot. It might be a third tackle. It might be a third linebacker. And then there's wants, and that's, what does the fifth receiver look like? And we want to upgrade, the space, at this certain position. So assessing your own team first, Craig, that's a number one, top of the pile, to go, who are we? How do we want to play to our identity? How can we feature these unique players? Do they have traits that maybe they hadn't seen yet? Do they have to change position? I've done it before where, a corner moves over to safety. A safety goes down to linebacker. There's those are the things that you could look at, and you get into the musts and needs and wants. And that's why, going, talking with Adam and the scouting staff here of putting that whole thing together, that's this puzzle. And you find pieces in the free agency, you find pieces in the draft, and how do you bring it all together? And so it's a constant evaluation to just keep tweaking, keep trying to get better, keep pushing it. And we're going to do that as hard as we can, because that's the name of the game, to find tough-ass, competitive guys that want to just absolutely bring it. the more you add that on your team, the more competitive and tough and, that you'll be. So that's what we're looking to do.
Last question for Dan Quinn, Commanders head coach, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Kliff has obviously had a lot of success in the NFL, but he also, as we all know, it didn't go well at the end in Arizona, and had this kind of pattern of starting hot and then teams kind of getting on to what he was doing. And I'm curious for you, Dan, from where you sit as you hire him as your offensive coordinator, what the conversations were like between you and him to give you the confidence that he did something similar to what you did, going back and kind of having those honest conversations and reviewing to ultimately find out how to be sustainably successful in the way that you guys want to here in D.C.
Yeah, and that's why I think he's excellent. That's what the best of the best do, right? Because I want to find this lesson. I want to find it to go, and this guy is a rare competitor, talking about Kliff, and he's constantly digging to find it. And so you evaluate, and you look at it, and you dig deep, and you find your truth, and you say, okay, this is what needs to change, and this is what, needs to stay the same. And so I think, like, in the simplest terms, what do you, start doing? What do you stop doing? What do you do different? And what do you do exactly the same? And if you follow that pattern, you're going to keep refining, and that's what you do. And every team, as you know, like, it's a little different year to year. This is not like in the NBA, like, hey, we're going to keep our same roster going into the next year. There's constant changing, and, like, it's one of the best parts of coaching, Craig. Like, the learning never stops. And so what was, good offensively or defensively 10 years ago is evolving and changing. And what doesn't change is, like, standards of effort and finishing and, taking care of the ball and creating takeaways. Like, those stand the test of time. The scheme part will change. Maybe the size and speed of players can change some, but, like, the essence of this game of blocking and tackling, hitting and running and connecting and going through that, like, that's the same, dude.
The principles never change if they're right. Dan Quinn, the new Commanders head coach, with us here on the Hoffman Show. DQ, very much appreciate your time. Look forward to the next time we get to chat. And good luck with hiring the staff and then getting into those cut-ups.
All right, Craig. I appreciate it, man. Enjoy the time out in Vegas.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dan. That is Dan Quinn, everybody, the Commanders head coach, with us here on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.